Abstract driftwood sculptures don't follow plans. They follow instinct. Every piece starts with a walk, a slow search along the beach, the lake, the riverbank. You're not looking for perfect shapes. You're looking for character. Weathered ends, split edges, bark stripped away by years of water. You pick up one branch, then another. Hold them together. Turn them around. Suddenly they speak. Not in words, but in form. In potential. These sculptures aren't about making the wood into something else. They're about revealing what's already there. Driftwood is already sculpted, twisted by current, baked by sun, softened by time. Your job isn't to overpower that. Your job is to listen, arrange, elevate. Some pieces rise up, tall vertical totems made from stacked branches that lean just enough to look like they're breathing. Others spread out, wide, low, chaotic tangles of limbs that look like fossilized movement. You might bind them together loosely or anchor them to a heavy base, concrete, slate, reclaimed wood. Something stable to hold all that wildness in place. There's no right shape. You're not building furniture. You're chasing feeling. Some driftwood sculptures look like storms frozen in midair. Others feel like wind captured in wood. You might build something sharp and spiky, all energy. Or smooth and open, like a whisper. What matters is that it's real. Nothing forced. Nothing fake. The wood tells the story. Grain warped from years in water. Cracks that widen and split. Gray, silver, bone white. Driftwood is never one color. It's hundreds of shades of surrender. No two pieces are alike and no sculpture can be replicated. Fasteners are hidden. Screws drilled from the back. Dowels. Glue. Rope bindings for a rawer, more tribal look. Some artists leave the fasteners exposed, not out of laziness but to let the construction show. But the best sculptures feel inevitable, like they were always meant to be in that shape, in that position, at that angle. Sometimes you'll see a piece mounted to a wall, a jagged web of driftwood stretching like a map of rivers. Other times it stands on its own, freestanding in a room like a relic from another world. One good piece of driftwood, twisted and powerful, can anchor an entire space. Light is everything. These sculptures change throughout the day. Shadows cast through the branches. Edges catch the light. Angles sharpen or fade depending on the time and source of illumination. Place one near a window and it becomes a sundial. Hit it with soft spotlights and it becomes a living thing. No two are ever the same. You can't plan these. You can't draw them out. You find. You test. You arrange. You step back. You try again. Sometimes the sculpture falls into place in minutes. Sometimes it takes weeks. But when it clicks, it doesn't just look balanced. Feels right. And it fits anywhere. In minimalist interiors, driftwood becomes the wild center. In rustic homes, it blends in like part of the landscape. In modern spaces, it's contrast, organic form against sleek surfaces. It never looks fake. It never goes out of style. Because it never followed one in the first place. Creating one doesn't take machines. It takes patience, a keen eye, and a willingness to let go of control. You're not making the wood conform, you're letting it guide you. You're arranging history. You're assembling silence. You're turning nature's debris into visual meditation. That's what abstract driftwood sculptures really are. Not just art, but stillness, energy, movement and time frozen in the most natural material on earth. You don't paint it. You don't sand it clean. You don't try to make it perfect. You just listen and build. Driftwood doesn't arrive in the world like most other materials. It's not harvested or processed or refined. It's not cut to size or measured against a blueprint. Driftwood simply becomes. It starts as a tree, sure. A trunk or a branch, alive with roots and leaves. But then time takes over. Storms, tides, and sun slowly strip it of its bark, its hardness, even its identity as a tree. What's left is something altered, worn, smooth, skeletal, like a memory of wood. And in the hands of the right artist, driftwood becomes something more than a remnant. It becomes sculpture. Not just any sculpture, but abstract forms that defy utility, defy logic, and somehow still speak directly to something deep in us. Something that recognizes shape in silence. Something that sees beauty in things that were once forgotten. Abstract driftwood sculptures are not carved into existence. They are discovered. The artist doesn't approach driftwood with a plan. Instead, the process begins with a walk, along a beach, a riverbank, a windswept lake. Eyes scanning the shoreline not for perfect pieces but for strange ones. Warped limbs. Twisted roots. Long, narrow torsos of wood with holes worn through the center, or limbs bleached bone white by the salt. Each one is a question mark. A starting point. a gesture frozen in wood. The artist doesn't bring shape to the driftwood. They find it already hidden within and then coax it out piece by piece. What makes these sculptures abstract is their refusal to represent anything literal. They are not birds or fish or boats, though they might remind you of those. They are not human forms, though they might carry posture, movement, tension. These sculptures are not trying to be something, they just are. A tangle of branches, a vertical burst of splinters, a twisted arc balanced impossibly on a stone. They rise from pedestals or hang weightlessly from ceilings, suspended by wire, catching light through their negative spaces. Some are arranged like bones in a spine, each driftwood piece separated just enough to suggest rhythm and motion. Others are clustered together, seemingly chaotic until you notice the pattern beneath the mess. A repetition of angle, a common grain direction, a deliberate balance of light and shadow. These sculptures don't just decorate a room. They change its tempo. You can feel it when you walk into the space. The silence grows thicker. The air feels slower. There's something primal about driftwood that makes us pause. Maybe it's the way the material looks, weathered, soft but strong, fragile but heavy with history. Maybe it's the way each piece looks like it could crumble at a touch, and yet has already survived so much. Wind, water, decay. Time. And somehow it's still here, hanging on the wall or standing upright in a beam of sunlight, transformed. No two driftwood sculptures are alike. That's the unspoken rule. You can't repeat the same twist twice. The artist might find a long, skeletal branch shaped like a crescent moon, then pair it with a flat, disc-shaped piece riddled with holes, like a fragment of drifted coral. When connected, they form something neither could have achieved alone. They become a curve and a shield, a gesture and a silence. And when you look at them, you don't ask, "What is that?" You ask, "Why does that feel familiar?" Because even though the shapes are abstract, they awaken something very old inside of us. Like cave paintings, like ancient symbols scratched into stone. Some sculptures are minimalist, just a single piece of wood mounted upright, anchored into a block of dark stone. Nothing added. No carving. Just the natural arc of the branch, twisted like it's stretching or reaching. Others are complex. Dozens of driftwood fragments interlocked, balanced, and suspended, creating a swirling spiral or a wave mid-crash. In both cases, it's the space between the wood that gives it life. The empty air becomes part of the sculpture. It gives the shape breath. It lets light pass through and cast shadows that move and stretch throughout the day. Often, the sculptures are mounted on neutral backdrops, matte black panels, raw concrete walls, soft canvas, to draw out the gray and tan tones of the driftwood. The color palette is always subdued. Driftwood carries within it shades of storm, silver, sand, ash, charcoal. Nothing bright. Nothing loud. But the texture makes up for it. The surfaces ripple, crack, and spiral. Knots burst outward like craters. Grain lines run like veins across limbs and torsos. When lit carefully, these textures become topographies. Tiny maps of erosion and time. You don't just see driftwood. You read it. Like Braille. Like a fossil. And the artists, those who work with driftwood in abstract form, are more like collaborators than creators. They don't dominate the material. They follow it. One piece might sit in a studio for months before it finds its match. Two shapes leaning against a wall, untouched, until one day they fall next to each other in just the right way, and suddenly a new form is born. That's how many of these sculptures come to life, not with blueprints but with accidents, with intuition, with long moments of waiting and short bursts of certainty. Many artists avoid cutting or sanding the wood at all. To alter the form is to interrupt the story. But sometimes small touches are added, not to change the driftwood but to support it. A steel rod for balance. A subtle joint for connection. A hidden hook for suspension. These additions vanish into the background. They don't announce themselves. Because the driftwood is always the star. Always the voice. And then there are the sculptures that move, not with motors but with air. Suspended forms that rotate slowly in a breeze, casting moving shadows on the floor or wall. Pieces that creak softly as they turn, like ships at sea. In these moments, the sculpture stops being an object and becomes a presence. You don't just view it, you listen to it. You wait for it to shift again. And when it does, it shows you a different face, a new silhouette, as if it's still transforming, still not finished becoming whatever it is. In gallery settings, abstract driftwood sculptures often occupy central space. Not mounted on walls but rising from pedestals. Visitors walk around them slowly like orbiting a star. In homes, they often appear in moments of stillness. An empty corner, a quiet entryway, a sunlit alcove. Places where they can be alone, uninterrupted, given space to breathe. Some people place them near indoor plants, where their natural curves echo the shape of leaves. Others pair them with glass or stone, creating a contrast between the organic and the refined. But always they bring weight, not physical heaviness but a sense of grounding, of presence. There's a quiet philosophy behind driftwood sculpture. A belief that beauty doesn't need to be controlled, that form can be found in chaos, that the things we often ignore or discard carry stories worth listening to. Driftwood was once part of something whole. Then it broke, floated, changed, and became something else, something shaped by the elements, not by design. It's the closest thing we have to naturally occurring sculpture. All the artist does is frame it, connect it, let it speak. And for the viewer, the result is deeply personal. One person might see movement. Another sees stillness. Someone else sees loss. Another sees rebirth. That's the power of abstraction. It leaves space for your own meaning. It doesn't tell you what to feel. It just creates the moment where feeling can begin.